door aye. So welcome. If you're joining me for the first time, this podcast is about reading the Bible through from Genesis to Revelation. As we go along the way, I demonstrate, I leave the scriptures that we read in the description box, and then I lace it with Nigerian humor. I retell the stories, I share insights if I have any, and if I have any displeasures, I share them as well. The idea is so that I can get to know more about the Bible and not be alone when I'm reading it. That's why I'm doing this with an audience. So I'm not a pastor or a preacher. I'm just someone who loves the Lord, who wants to know more about God and the Bible, and then to encourage anybody who is really curious about the Bible and wants to know more to join me on this journey. Okay, so that's the idea. Every single day we look at we follow a structured guide from this reading daily Bible reading guide, where we look at an Old Testament, a New Testament, a Psalm, and a proverb every single day. So today our Old Testament is Ezra chapters 1. Our New Testament is Corinthians chapters 1 and 2. And then our Proverbs is chapters 20 verses 20 to 22 and 23. And our Psalms, we're done with Psalms. I mean, today is day 117. So we've made great progress and I'm happy about it. So let's quickly get into it. So we saw the end of an era yesterday and a new king, Cyrus, a completely pagan king. God spoke to a pagan king. You know, one of the things that I saw from reading the Bible, that God could speak to pagan kings through their mediums, and the kings will recognize that it was the God of the universe that spoke to them. It's very strange. Balaam we're not told that Balaam was a prophet of God. The only people who really knew God were the Israelites at that point. Moses was still, gathering evidence to show these people that, look, God is God. Moses was still leading and doing all these things in the midst of the Israelites to even gain their trust in God. So who else knew about God? Yet Balaam came and said God was God. And now King Cyrus, another king, said God told him to build a temple. And he said, look, if you consider yourself from that place, get up and go and build. And he never interrupted them again. He never interrupted. In fact, he supervised them. Anyway, let's look at what happened in the first year of King Cyrus of Persia's time. Prophet Jeremiah's words became live and active, and the king, after claiming that the whole kingdom was his, said God had asked him to build a house in Jerusalem. Judah had been sacked, so God went to a foreigner. That's what I said here. Anyway, whoever wanted to could get up and go. And so the houses of Benjamin, I see you, so Slan. Thank you for joining. I say hi. So the houses of Judah and Benjamin, along with their priests and Levites, left for Jerusalem immediately. They were encouraged to, with silver, livestock. In Babylon, where they were encouraged with all of that to go, take as much as you need. Cyrus returned 30 gold platters. There were shields, 30 gold shields, 1,000 silver, I think shields as well, and then 29 knives, 30 gold basins, 30 golden basins, and 1,000 other articles, giving them back to the Israelites, to a guy called Shishbazzar, the prince of Judah. Zerubbabel came with 10 people, including Nehemiah and Mordecai. You remember Mordecai? Okay, no, you don't. You're reading the Bible with me for the first time, so you don't know who they are, right? So Slan is you. I see you. Yeah, so he came back. I wrote including Nehemiah and Mordecai, and you'll get to know about them much later. That's because I'm a bit familiar with the stories in the Bible. Several other unfamiliar names were listed, which I didn't bother to write. Several other towns, priests, Levites, gatekeepers, just in vast numbers were listed. A certain priest line wasn't listed because they couldn't trace their genealogy. They said, when they showed up, they were like, oh, we are so and so. When they traced their genealogy, they couldn't track. Bonjour, bonjour Sinan. They couldn't track where they came from, so they couldn't be counted. Urim and Thummim, which was something they consulted to know what God was doing whenever they wanted to know what God's matter was on a thing. So the Urim and Thummim had to be consulted. So 42,360,000 minus male and female servants were the numbers of the people who returned back from exile. 7,377. What am I doing? Oh, okay. So I'm reading the Bible. This podcast, we're reading the Bible from Genesis to Revelation. So I just retell the stories. We have a scripture we study every single day. We follow a guide. We study that guide every single day, and then I retell the stories. I lace it with humor. I dramatize it if I think I need to. But the idea is that at the end of this year, we'll be done reading the Bible from Genesis to Revelation. So you're welcome. Hello, Amal. Thank you, Amal. Thank you for your kind words. Highly appreciated. Yes. So today we are looking at the book of Ezra. We're looking at Corinthians and somewhere in Proverbs as well. So just hang in there. Thanks. Thank you so much for your hearts. I appreciate them. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So 200 singers, 736 horses, 245 mules, 435 camels, 6,720 donkeys. These were the things that came back when the Israelites were coming back to Judah from exile. Heads of houses together contributed 61 gold drachmas, 5,000 minas. I'm not sure why I wrote silver here. Maybe I missed something. 100 priestly garments for the house of God. Everyone dwelt in their cities. You are the best. Aww. You are so kind. I really appreciate your words. Thank you. It's not every day you get people say such kind things. Yes. And so I wrote here as just my insight into reading this particular first chapter of Ezra that the Jews are such incredible record keepers. Like everything is documented. Everything is documented. They leave not. Please subscribe to my channel and turn on the notification button so that you know when next I go live. Thank you, Sosan. Thank you. Sophie, today you guys are on fire. What's going on? Thank you guys. Thank you. Yeah, so that ends our Old Testament reading. The book of Proverbs, we're just looking at two scriptures there. Proverbs 20 verses 22 and 23. So 22 says, do not say I will recompense evil. Wait for the Lord and he will save you. 23 says, divers weights are an abomination to the Lord, and dishonest scales are not good. For people are in commerce and business. Thank you very much. Thank you. I've been wearing glasses since I was a very young girl. All right, so we are still in Corinthians chapters 1, we'll just tiptoe into chapters 2. But basically, Paul continues talking about the divisions that had emerged in the Corinthian churches, basically in the churches where the Gentiles were. And he continued to talk about how the message of God, yes, I'm from Africa, from Nigeria, to be precise, from Nigeria. You could tell from my accent, right? All right, so Paul continues to talk about the message that it may sound foolish to people, but it's the power of God for people who believe. And he tried to illustrate by saying that God made the wise things of this world foolish to those who are very smart, And he went on to say, whether you were a scholar, philosopher, all of that, and you were considered a wise person. Like for instance, now I'm currently doing a PhD, right? And by every standard, they'd consider people with a PhD anywhere in the world as among the wise and smart people of the world. Paul is saying here that even if you're among those people, what we are talking about in terms of spiritual stuff is foolish. What your wisdom is foolishness compared to this thing that God has just done. That's what Paul is saying. So someone like me, if I were existing in Paul's time and I was trying to act like, but I am getting a 3rd degree right now, so I know what I'm talking. Paul was trying to say, look, in spite of how much you think you know, it is foolishness to God. It's foolishness compared to the things that these spiritual things, and he goes on to try and break down what they mean. So he says, since this world's wisdom could not identify with God, could not recognize God, God was pleased through the foolishness of preaching to save those who have chosen to believe. So normally everyone would have thought that Jesus would come to people who were super smart, but the people who were smart kind of like didn't accept it. So God chose like foolish people. And meanwhile, this thing God had done was such a, you know how a child is smart. What's that about? What's that? Are you a police officer? Are you a police officer? So, son. Anyway, so I think the illustration here for me is like me and my toddler. I need my toddler to do something. So I know what I have planned. I know exactly the outcome I want. But my toddler, hello Emmanuel Fakinde. Now you sound Nigerian to me. Welcome. So I can have a toddler and I know what I'm trying to achieve. Maybe I've decided that I'm going to do a certain thing. Maybe I'm going to bake a cake. But instead of baking a cake with flour, I'm going to use bananas. I'm going to make a cake that is without gluten. You know, but maybe my toddler has always seen cakes made with flour. And so he's arguing with me and saying, Mommy, I know what I'm saying. Cakes are not made with, you can't use bananas to make cakes. You have to use flour. So to my child, my idea to use cakes with bananas is foolishness. But to me, who knows exactly what I'm trying to do? Yeah, I recognize your name. But to me, who knows what I'm trying to do, it's wise. So it's in that analogy that I'm trying to explain what I understood from reading it here. So Paul was trying to say that it pleased God through the foolishness of preaching. Preaching was the way God used to save people. God didn't use anything like a war, didn't use like a king. He used like a simple person and just words to touch people's hearts, and people became saved. So that is considered foolish to people who are very smart, because I gave an example like in my PhD class, we look at theories, we look at what validates, we look at critical, oh gosh, I can't even begin to think about all those complicated concepts here right now. But you know, God didn't use any of those complicated things. He simplified the story of salvation and made it simple, just believe. So that's what Paul was saying here. Paul is saying that the Jews want miracles, the Gentiles want wisdom, but we just preach that is him, and anybody who believes and is telling any other person, we just preach Jesus. Okay, we just tell the story of Jesus. He came, he died, he rose, he resurrected, and any of us who believe in him have access to the new life he has given us both on earth and in heaven. So Emmanuel, we are just we're reading through the Bible in 1 year. This is episode 217. So every day we follow a structured guide where we look at different. So today we're looking at 1 Corinthians. So at the end of the year, we'll be done from Genesis to Revelation. We'll be done reading the Bible. So that's basically it. So this topic is not a topic. It's just a chapter in the Bible that I'm narrating. So anytime I read the Bible, I just retell the stories. If you were following me when I was retelling the stories about Jesus, you would have really laughed, because there was so much Nigerian demonstrations. I demonstrated so much the spats Jesus kept having between the Israelites, between the Pharisees and him, you know, and all of that. But a lot of these Paul's teachings are so philosophical that I don't want to lose the message by being too funny. Okay, so that's the idea. I don't want to lose it by being too funny and lacing it with my own humor. So that's why I'm just trying to retell what I understood. And so the idea is that this is my interpretation, and you are free to read the scripture and even leave your interpretation in the comments. Yeah, so please subscribe. Yeah. Please subscribe. Yes, you've missed. So we've had fun. There are some days I was upset, some days I found it funny, some days I was angry. Now when I'm looking at Paul, I'm just trying to tread carefully so that I can get past all of these complicated. It's not too complicated. I'm just trying to simplify it though. Okay, so that's the idea. So like I was saying, God kind of like use simple things to bring about such a great thing as salvation. Now, in the spiritual realm, this is like, oh, thank you. So in the spiritual realm, this is like the biggest deal ever. The fact that finally, God has finally found a way to reconcile his coolest creation back to himself, which is like salvation story, right? To us on earth, it might sound like it's not a big deal, but to heaven and spiritual things, when we are all going to, when we shed this body, it is a big deal. So Paul is trying to stress this to the Gentiles and the Jews, people who had become Christians, so that they will understand how important this thing was. So Paul said, Jews may want miracles, Gentiles wisdom, but we preach Christ crucified, stumbling both the Jew and the Gentiles. In other words, it's like, is that all? Is that all? Have you met people, when you talk to them, they say things like, I can't believe I should just believe. Do you know what I've done? Do you know who I've been? I can't even accept that this is what it really takes to become a Christian. I can't. Have you had people like that? It's so simplistic that it's offensive to people. That's what Paul is saying. Is that foolishness that God has chosen? Just like, accept his foolishness. Accept it. That's what Paul is saying. Anyway, so Jesus becoming wiser, so Paul is saying here that, but what did was becoming wiser than, how did I put this now? God's foolishness is wiser than man's wisdom. His weakness is stronger than man's strongest point. He's and I wrote here that you think you were called. You think you when you were called, did you have any wisdom? Did you have any influence? Were you anything important when you were called? When God gave you, like, so for people who have this may be so relatable to people who have come from a place where they have really been disregarded. It's like, oh, finally I'm somebody, I matter to someone. So Paul is saying here that even you were called now, and you matter to, and and God chose you, and chose the foolish things of this world to confound wise people, and chose weak things to confound weak things to shame the strong, lowly things to nullify highly esteemed things, so that no one can boast. In other words, God has chosen this simplistic, simple way of just let us talk about the gospel as the main route to salvation. Nothing like you need to do any sacrifices, nothing like you need to try and be good yourself, nothing like you need to you don't need to hold it together anymore. Just accept, first off, that Jesus died for you and his death cleansed you of your sin. Can you believe that? It's that simple. So that's what Paul is saying. He has made the weak things to shame strong things, thinking that you need to really do something strong to earn God's love. It has made lowly things to nullify highly esteemed things, so that nobody can say, oh, it's because I am highly esteemed, I know what to do to get God's love. Nobody can boast of earning God's love. Nobody. That's what Paul is saying here. Nobody can boast before Jesus. We are all in Christ because he became our wisdom, our righteousness, our holiness, our superior wisdom. We are just merely the testimonies about God. We have nothing. I wasn't smart enough to decode it. He said, look, I didn't come with eloquence when I was teaching you guys these things. I didn't come with eloquence. I didn't come with superior wisdom. See, Paul was a lawyer, right? And Paul, I feel like Paul was a very annoying person, honestly. I described him some episodes before. I said, I feel like Paul is short, chubby, and he's like not so cute. And then he's super annoying. Like, he'd be so insistent. No, wait. Because the Bible narrated in the book of Ezra, Paul will talk from morning to night. People will gather in his house. I think they had to be cooking jollof rice there or something, because people would stay there from morning to night arguing with him. He must have been so argumentative. So wait, let me explain. Hold on. Let me get the book. Off and on. Paul must have yes, I'm from Nigeria. Paul must have off and on, just trying to persuade people. He said, I didn't come with eloquence. When I go to the court of law, I know where to speak with eloquence. And we saw it when he was fighting with the high priest in Jerusalem.